Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Blunt Stuffy and in these videos I'm gonna try and show you how I set up my characters in Unreal Engine 4. I already uploaded a similar video like this yesterday, but I noticed something was wrong with the resolution and I have a tiny bit of better audio quality right now, so I decided to redo the video and we're also going to continue with part 2. Most of the stuff we're going to do in this video is pretty basic. We're going to make it so our character has 3 different move speeds. By default he's running, and if we hold down our right mouse button he's going to a slow walk. And you can maybe reduce spread and make aiming a little bit easier, or zoom in or something like that. And if I hold down my shift button he goes to a sprint and my stamina will deplete. If I go back to running or walking my stamina will regenerate and I can sprint again. We're using an aim offset, so our character aims his weapon up and down as we're moving our mouse up and down. And we're also going to make sure all of this replicates in multiplayer, so you can use it in a multiplayer setup as well. I think those are the most important things we're going to cover. So let's just get started with it right away. Let me dock this project on another monitor. Here we go. I'm using one of the Paragon characters. Epic dropped them for free on the marketplace. You can download them and join, or you can use your own character. Obviously, it's just what you want. I'm also using the third person template project, so we can copy over some basic controls and save us a little bit of time. I'm using the Paragon character, but obviously you can use any of them as long as you got the animations for it. Okay, so add the character to your project, open your project, and you should end up with something like this. The Paragon Murdoch is in your folder structure, and the rest of it is the third person example project, and we're going to start off here. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to add a few folders to keep things nice and organized, so let's create one and call this Blueprints, BP. Oh, I don't want to create it inside the Murdoch folder. I want to create it inside my content folder. Blueprints, open that folder. I'm going to create another folder called characters, like that. Open that folder as well. And in here we're going to create our first blueprint. So right click and select blueprint class, and we're going to choose the character. Click character, and we're going to name this something like character. No, I need to spell that right. Character base. This is a character that won't be an actual playable character, but this will be the parent for all of our children blueprints. We're going to put all of our universal stuff in here, like walking, shooting, the abilities of all characters and stuff like that. And the specific things like the mesh and the AnimBluePrints will be stored in the children blueprints. Damn that word. I think I'm going to use BP for short, so I won't struggle with the pronunciation of that word as much. Okay, so BP is blueprint. Let's open this BP, and we're going to add a few things in here. Let me also pull up my notes to the side so I won't forget too much. First of all, we're going to copy over the standard controls from the third person character. So let's go to your event graph and let's minimize this for now. Go to the third person BP blueprints folder and open the third person character blueprint. Now we're just going to select everything that's in here. So drag around it and press Ctrl C to copy. And obviously, on an empty spot, press Ctrl V to paste. And here we have our controls. I'm going to delete these ones because these are for virtual reality and we're not using that. At least I'm not. So, and if you go to the left a little bit, you'll see here are 2 variables and we need to add those to make things work. If you look at the third person character blueprint, you'll see the variables on the side here. Both of them are floats and both of them have a default value of 45 if you look over here. So we're going to create those, base turn rate and base lookup rate. Add variable, base turn rate, just like that. Now it turns it into a boolean. We're going to turn it back into a float, and it's going to give us this pop-up. Just ignore it, change variable type, and that's fine. And let's duplicate this one, select it and press Ctrl W and make it our base lookup rate. And this one is a float, so that's good. We're going to compile it and set the default values to 45 for both of them, just like that. Compile, save, and that should be good to go right now. The other thing we're going to add in here is a camera, so let's just go to viewport, make it a little bit easier, and we're going to select the character, add component, and look for a spring arm, I guess. Yeah, here you go. It needs a space, a spring arm. Give it a name if you like, it's not really important, but what is important is you check this flag, use pawn control rotation, enable that. Now with the spring arm selected, you're going to add another component and you're going to look for a camera. Select the top one, the normal camera. Give it a name if you like, again, not really important. And you don't really need to change anything else in here, I think. Let me quickly check my notes and take a sip of water. No, that's fine. We're done here right now, so let's just compile and save this. And we're going to close it down. Now we're going to create our first child blueprint. And we're going to do that from the parent we just created. So just go to the character folder, select your character base and right click. And at the top you'll see create child blueprint class. Click that one, and now we're going to give it a name. Just name it character Murdoch. And let's add a capital in there, Murdoch, just like that. Now let's open this new child blueprint. Everything you added to the parent blueprint will already be inherited by the child, so you don't need to worry about that. Only thing you need to do in here is the specific stuff you want to add. For now we're just going to add the mesh in here, but at a later stage we'll add it to our info struct and our data table so we can change it easily and have different versions of each character, because Epic also included different skins, so why not use them. But for now let's just add it here. So select our mesh, go to the right in the mesh, the skeletal mesh, and select Murdoch or your mesh, whichever mesh you're using. Now make sure it fits the collision capsule, so reposition it a little bit. Something like that. Make sure it's rotated in the right direction, so it points in the same direction as the arrow. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, just like that. And that should do for now. Let me see what we're going to do next. The next thing we're going to need is an animation blueprint and a BlendSpace to control our animations. We're going to need to fill in the AnimBP right here in the Anim class, but we don't have that one yet, so let's create it. Save and compile this one, close it down. Now I'm going to make another folder just for organization's sake. Let's call it AnimBP. We're going to right click, we'll go to blueprints, animation, and over here you see animation blueprint. Click that one. The engine will ask you to select the skeleton because animation blueprint is for a single skeleton only. So select the Murdoch skeleton and press OK. Give this a name, Murdoch AnimBP, for example, and let's open it up. Now, by default, you're going to end up in the animation graph. This is where you tell what animations you're using. You're going to blend animations and things like that to create your final animation. In the event graph, you're able to get some variables from your player, store them in other variables, and use that to drive your anim graph, basically. So that's what you're looking at right here. We're going to start in the anim graph, and we're going to create a new state machine. So right click in an empty spot and look for state machine. Here it says add new state machine. Click that one. Let's rename it and let's call it base locomotion. Double capitals in here. Come on. Base locomotion, just like that. Double click it to open it. And now we're going to create our first state machine. Let's drag off the entry node and create a new state. Add state. Let's call this idle. From the idle state, drag off again. Create a new state, and let's call this walk, run, sprint. Like so. Now from the walk, run, sprint, you're going to drag back to the idle state again to create a new transition, just like this. So that means you can go from idle to walk, run, sprint, but you're also able to go back from walk, run, sprint to idle. The little circles you see over here are the transition rules, and those tell the engine when you're able to make that transition, basically. Let's see, for the transition rules, we're going to need a few variables. So let's create the variables first, and then we're going to create the transition rule. Over on the left here, click add variable. The first one is going to be is in air, to tell if we're jumping or falling or if we're on the ground. It's going to be a boolean, so that's fine. Leave it like that. Select it and press Ctrl W and create a new variable called is accelerating. It's also going to be a boolean, so that's fine. Again, duplicate our variable and let's call this one speed. The speed variable is going to be a float, so change that. And the last variable we're needing is direction, and that's also going to be a float, so that's fine. Now let's go to the event graph and let's try and make sure our variables actually store something. We're starting over here. Sometimes there's already a node here, try get pawn owner. Sometimes it's not, so let's get it. Try get pawn owner, just like that. The target is the anim instance. That's good, just leave it like that. And we're going to continue from here. First we're going to check if we're valid, is valid, and just plug it into the input object. If we're not valid, we're not going to do anything, so that's fine, just leave it like that, and we're going to continue from the is valid pin. The first thing, let's do the is in air variable. We are going to need the movement component for that to see if we're falling or not. So drag off the try get pawn owner and look for a movement component, get movement component. Select that one. And from the movement component, we drag off and type is falling. And that returns our boolean to tell us if we're falling or not. So we can simply plug that into our is in air. If you hold Alt and drag in is in air, you get a setter. Plug in the boolean, plug in the execution pin, and our first variable is ready to go. Let's comment this, set is in air, so we know what it is. And let's continue with the next variable. Let's just work down the list and go with is accelerating. For the is accelerating, we're going to need our hero character. And that's not too hard because we're using a parent-child blueprint setup. We can simply cast to our parent blueprint. Let me tell you what I mean by that. We're going to drag off the pawn owner. we're going to type cast to, and we can simply cast to our base character. All of our children blueprints will also cast valid. No matter what character our player picked, it will always work. So that's a nice thing about using parent and child blueprints. So we're going to cast to our base character. Drag it on like here. From the base character, you want to get the movement component. So drag from there and type get movement component. Now don't get this one, but look at the variable section, and here's character movement. That's the character movement component. Select it. And from the character movement component, we are going to look for, let me double check, get current acceleration. So just look for accelerate, get current acceleration. That's going to return a vector, and we want to convert that, so drag off it and type vector length. That basically gives us our speed, and if our speed is greater than 0, so drag off it, greater than float, select it. If it's greater than 0, that's exactly what we needed. And we're just going to plug that into our is accelerating, so hold down Alt, drag it in to get a setter, connect up the boolean, and connect the execution pin, and here we have our is accelerating variable. So let's comment this as well, is accelerating, come on, just like that. Next one, let's do the speed. This one is pretty basic. We're going to start off the pawn owner again this time, so drag off the pawn owner and type get velocity. Get velocity, again this will return a vector, and we're going to turn it into a float, so we're going to do vector length. And we can just plug that into our speed directly, hold Alt to get a setter and plug it in. Connect the execution pin, and our speed variable is done. Comment it, set speed. And the last thing we're going to do right now is the direction. For the direction we're going to need our rotation, and we're going to get it from our pawn owner. So drag off the pawn owner and type get actor rotation and select that one. Now in an empty spot, just right click and look for calculate direction and select the calculate direction node. This one is going to ask for a velocity. Well, we already got that, so just plug it in from our previous step. It's going to ask for a rotation. We just got that, so plug that one in. And now we have our direction. Hold Alt to get a setter and connect up these pins just like that. Make sure you connected this one as well. And here's our direction. Comment it, set direction. Here we go. So now we should have our first 4 variables working. We're going to add more later on probably, but for now this should do. So let's go back to the anim graph. Over here click on the base locomotion, and we're back into our state machine again. Excuse me. So let me scroll down in my notes a little bit to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. We did this. Yeah, we're going to do the transition rules right now. So first, the transition rule from idle to walking, running, and sprinting. Just double click on this one. What we're going to do if is our speed is greater than 0, if we are not in the air, and if we are accelerating. If all 3 of those are true, we are going to enter the walk, run, sprint state. So hold Control and drag in speed to get a getter. Drag off this and say is greater than float. And if it's greater than 0, so that's good. Just drag off this and type and boolean. Now this gives us 2 pins on this side, and we're going to need 3, so just click add pin. For the second one, we want to know if we are accelerating, so just drop on right onto one of the pins. And for the third one, if we're not in the air, so hold Control and drag down is in air. To get a getter, drag off that and type not boolean, just like this, connect it to the third pin and connect this pin to the transition. So if our speed is greater than 0 and we are accelerating and we are not in the air, we're able to enter this transition. That's good. Now if you got a back button on your mouse, you can simply click back and you're going back to the previous screen, which is our state machine. Now let's do the other transition rule for going back from walk, run, sprint to idle. Just double click that one and we're going to make the transition if we are not accelerating. So hold down Control, drag in is accelerating, drag off that and say not boolean and just plug it in like that. That should do it for our transition rules right now. So we can go back to our state machine and the next thing we're going to do is add the animation. So double click our idle and you're going to end up in this screen. Now on the right side you can go to the asset browser and over here excuse me, are all the animations your skeletal mesh can use. So just look for idle and you can drag in one of the idle animations. We can cover later on to have multiple idle animations and make sure things play randomly and have it a bit more advanced. But right now just drag in one idle and connect it up like that. Make sure it's looping, but it should be by default, so that's good. And we're going to go back to our base locomotion. Now if we want to add our walk, run, sprint, we're going to do that with a BlendSpace. But first we need to create one. So let's just compile and save this right now and let's close it down. A BlendSpace will simply blend animations based on variables you enter, and it's making the transitions a bit smoother if you're going from walking to running or running to sprinting and stuff like that. And it's also a bit easier to set up without having a lot of transition rules. You might not need to check the speed of the player and things like that. You can simply plug it in the BlendSpace and it works. So that's a way to set things up. First we're going to go to our BP folder and I'm going to create a new folder called BlendSpaces. I'm going to open it and I'm going to right click in the folder, go to animation and select the BlendSpace. Don't select BlendSpace 1D but go for the normal one, the 2D BlendSpace. Again it's going to ask you to pick a skeleton, so Murdoch skeleton, and give it a name Murdoch BlendSpace, just like this. And let's open it up. Now in the bottom center you see the graph, and right now there's nothing in there. It's none 0 to 100, 0 to 100. We're going to set the values for the graph, and then we're going to drop the animations in the correct spots. Let me show you what I mean by that. On the left side you got the horizontal axis and the vertical axis settings. First the horizontal axis, let's call that direction. The minimum value is going to be -180 and the maximum value is going to be 180. So that basically means turning all the way left until you're facing backwards and turning all the way right until you're facing backwards. And our direction 0 is facing forwards basically. Our interpolation time, we can set that to make animations blend a little bit smoother. It's something you can play around with, but let's just start with something like 0.2 and go to the vertical axis right now. We're going to call that speed, and it's going to go from 0 to 900. And again set the interpolation time to 0.2 just to start out with. And now you see our graph has changed. It's going from -180 to 180 and from 0 to 900 with our speed and our direction. You can drag around this little green ball here that's showing where your preview screen currently is. Right now we're just looking at a Y pose because we didn't put in any animations. But you can see right here is direction 0, speed 0. Right here is direction minus 180, speed 0. The other side still speed 0, but direction 180. And if we're moving up, our speed increases. So we can just drop animations, excuse me, on the points in the graph and tell what animation belongs to what direction and what speed. Let's start off with the idle, because all of these are speed 0. All of these are going to be our idle animation, so that's really simple. Drag in the idle and just drop it on one of the intersections, and immediately you'll see the preview change. Now do this for all 5 spots on the bottom. Just drag the idle animation and drop it on each of these spots, just like so. Now the next thing is the second line from the bottom, which is speed 225, I guess. So it's going to be our walk speed. Look for the walk animations, and now we're going to have to enter the backward, forward, left, and right. So if we're on the left side here, we got minus 180, and if we're on the right side, we got 180 degrees. Both of these are all the way around, so both of these are facing backwards basically. So drop the backwards animation all the way to the left and all the way to the right. The walk forward is going to be the center one, direction 0, speed 225, and then we have walk left on the left side of that and walk right on the right side of that. Now if you drag around the preview pin, you can see he's going from a nice smooth idle animation into a walking animation, and he's blending into sidestepping or walking backwards. So it's blending the animations based on the variables you enter to make things look a bit smoother. We're going to skip the middle line and we're going to put the run animations on the second line from the top. So that's around 600, I think, 680, 675. So look for the run animations. Sorry, I'm going to use the jog animations. Jog backwards. Let's drop it all the way to the left, minus 180 degrees, and all the way to the right, 180 degrees. Then we have our jog forward, and that's going to end up in the center, like so. And then we got jog left and jog right, jog left on the left side, and jog right on the right side. And the last thing we're going to do is add our sprint animations. So look for sprint. And again, starting with sprinting backwards all the way to the left on the minus 180 and all the way to the right on the 180 degrees. Put the sprint animation in the 0 degrees and look for left and right. Drop the left on the left spot and the right on the right spot. So now you can move this around a bit and see how it looks and see if you're satisfied with your animations, and it should look something like this. So that's setting up a blend space. Just save this and we can close it down right now. And we're back in our animation blueprint. It's the AnimBP Murdoch AnimBP. And then we're in the animation graph in our state machine, and we're going back to our walk run sprint. Over here we're going to use our blend space, and if you look at the asset browser right now, you see our blend space is in there. So just simply drag it in like this, plug in the pin into the result, and now you see it's asking for a direction and a speed, because we set those variables in the graph on the horizontal and the vertical axis, and we already got those, so that's good. Drop those on right on top of them, just like so, and we should have our working blend space. Compile and save this, and let me check what we're going to do next. Let's just see how everything's looking in game right now. I think that's a nice moment. So we're going to close this down, and we're going to go to our characters folder and open our character Murdoch again. We need to fill in the anim class right here, anim class. If you're in the full blueprint editor, you want to select the mesh first, and then on the right side in the details panel you can fill in the anim class, click it and look for the Murdoch AnimBP we just created and select that one, compile this and close it down. Now we're going to change the pawn that the game is using by default, so go to the third person BP blueprints and open the third person game mode, and right in there you see the default pawn class. It's now the third person character. Let's change it to our Murdoch character, so character Murdoch. Compile that and save it. And the last thing we need to do is open our viewport and select the default character that's already in here and just delete that guy to get rid of him. Save everything, save selected, and it should work right now, I think. So if we press play, we didn't plug in a pin somewhere. Let me check. It's probably over here. Yeah, I know already. In the animation graph, we didn't connect it to the final animation pose, because later we need to add stuff in here, but right now if we want to test it, we need to just plug it in like that and compile, save, and now it should work. Here we have our Murdoch character that's not playing any animations. Great, we forgot another pin. Let me double check. Those look fine. What else do we got? That looks like it should work. I didn't connect up this pin. Yeah, then it's not going to work. So always make sure you got all your pins connected. I'm a bit distracted because I look at my notes every now and then, so this might look a bit messy, but basically there's nothing wrong. I just forgot to connect a few pins. So here we are, it's working. We can run around with our character. You can see he's using our BlendSpace and he's using our run animation. Right now we cannot walk or we cannot sprint. We don't have a jump animation, so it's really basic, but you can see it's working and we're getting there. So for the first part I think that's it, and we're going to continue in part 2. Thanks for watching everybody, hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Laters.